give her long dissertations about what I wanted her to do in obedience to me. And she would listen to every single word that I said. And I would say, do you understand what I'm saying? And she would say, yes, ma'am. And I would close the door and come back out, and she would be gone. And part of our conversation was, don't go to a certain house on a certain street with a certain group of people who I believe are not the best kinds of people for you to be with. But for some reason, she loved to be with those particular people. And so I would say, your place right here is on the porch for this time. You could sit here and enjoy the outside, but don't leave the porch, okay? Yes, ma'am. And I'd go back inside, and I'd come back out 5 minutes later, she'd be gone. She would be gone. And so I think about obedience and how difficult it is for us to be obedient, or how difficult it is for us to go maybe halfway in obedience. But then the other part, we might say, well, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do A, B, and C, but D, E, F, well, we'll see about that. So you get this much out of me, but the rest of it, you might not get. How is it with us and God? Do we do the same thing when God gives us a direction? Are we totally obedient? Or when God says, put $200 in the plate today, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to put 100 today. We sometimes don't go all the way when we are supposedly being obedient in our service to the Lord, or in our service to one another, or in our jobs, or wherever we happen to be in any particular situation. We struggle with obedience. Now, we're going to focus on obedience as it relates to our relationship with the Lord, and we're using the scripture in 2 Kings chapter 5. And we read the entire 19 verses for you because it is actually like reading a story to you. Get the entire story about Naaman and the prophet Elisha, and Naaman's healing from leprosy. And the way the story is laid out, it's very clear to us what message the Lord is giving us about obedience. And when we look at the scripture that Fran read to us from 2 Kings, we find that Naaman was a warrior. He was a mighty soldier in the Syrian army. And even God gave him the courage to become victorious. He was rich, and I'm sure that he was handsome, he had fine clothes, but guess what? He was a leper. And what we know about leprosy is that, my goodness, no one would want to be around someone who had leprosy because of the horrible, horrible disfigurement that they went through, the psychological problems that they had, the sociological problems that they had. He was a leper. Interestingly enough, because the Syrians had taken captive a young maid from Israel. They had taken her from her home and from her family, and she had come to Syria to be Naaman's wife's maid. But she knew the Lord, and she saw Naaman's condition as a leper, and she let them know that there's a prophet in Israel who is able to help Naaman be cleansed. And I thought about that. There's a prophet in Israel. I thought about, what does that say to us? There's a woman on 42nd Street. There's a group of people on 42nd Street who will provide help for you, who will give you counsel, will invite you in for Bible study, feed you if you need it, give you clothes, give school supplies to your children, whatever it is. There's a woman or women on 42nd Street. There's a family of people on 42nd Street who help people. There's a lady on Parkside Avenue who'll do anything she can to help you. There's this man who lives in Germantown. He's always doing something. So think about that. There's a prophet in Israel. Think about wherever you are. Can people say that about you? And this young woman is saying to these people who are actually enemies of hers, but she now has to live there. But she's giving them, with her Christ-like heart, she's giving them information as to how Naaman the warrior, the big rich man, can be healed.